One of the most iconic television programs, Hogan's Heroes, ran from 1965 to 1971 and was a big success because it combined witty humor with the somber setting of World War II. But Hogan's Heroes is much more than just its plot and cast of oddball characters. Very startling secrets were concealed behind the scenes of this huge triumph. What major details regarding Hogan's idols have lately come to light? Come explore the specifics with us in this video. Details are the true sources of inspiration for Hogan's Heroes. Hogan's Heroes did not begin in a post-World War II world. When the show's creators, Bernard Fine and Albert Ruddy, learned that NBC was also working on a series called Campo 44, which was set in an Italian prison camp during World War II, they promptly abandoned the original plan, which was really to take place in a domestic American jail. The choice to move Hogan's Heroes to a World War II POW camp scenario was made quickly, according to an interview included on the full series DVD set. In a single day, the creators completely revised the premise. Eventually, Robert Butler found himself sitting in the director's chair. Later, he remembered, "What about Butler?" my agent asked when he arrived on the scene. And someone replied, "Yes. I went ahead and did it, and it was a ton of fun." Fans of Hogan's Heroes would grow to admire and adore the original pilot, which was shot in black and white. Although there were some obvious distinctions, the spirit was the same. Camp 13 was the name of Stalag 13. Carter was a lieutenant and wasn't even supposed to follow the pilot back. Leonid Kinski also portrayed a Russian, and General Burkhalter made an appearance, although he was a colonel, not a general. Although Stalag 13, the show's location, was entirely made up, it had historical roots. Stalags, short for Stammlager, were actual prisoner of war camps run by Germany during World War II. Captured Allied non-commissioned officers were housed at these camps. The concept was based on true locations, even though Stalag 13 as it was depicted in the series didn't exist. By creating a fictional version, the authors were able to freely combine humor and wartime themes, creating a distinctive and captivating fusion of history and comedy. Kinski decided against carrying on with the series. He chose not to participate because he felt uneasy performing a comedy about Nazis. He wasn't by himself. After the pilot, co-creator Albert Ruddy also retreated since he didn't want to be bound by a television contract. Following the completion of those preliminary choices, the series cast, tone, and music needed to be finalized. The 1953 film Stalag 17, a drama about life in a World War II prisoner of war camp, was created by authors Donald Bevan and Edmund Treskinsky before Hogan's Heroes even aired. They weren't pleased when Hogan's Heroes appeared. They filed a lawsuit against Bing Crosby, the show's producer, for stealing their ideas. The matter proceeded to trial. In fact, a jury decided in favor of the writers, but the judge overturned that decision. His logic and the two pieces' tones were entirely different. Stalag 17 meant business. Hogan's Heroes weren't at all. In 2012, legal issues reappeared when the show's rights were entangled once more. Although Bing Crosby Productions initially received the movie and TV rights from Bernard Fine and Albert Ruddy, arbitration eventually granted Bernard separate movie rights through Mark Cuban's business. In 2014, there were even plans to make a movie on Hogan's Heroes. And spectators just continued to like the show even when these decreased. Are there any additional secrets on the show? To find out, keep watching. The casting of the show has a hidden meaning. The casting of the program is one of its most surprising turns. It's ironic because a few of the performers who played Nazi officers were actually Jewish. Werner Klemperer, who portrayed the awkward and uninformed Colonel Klink, is the most well-known example. Klemperer was born in Cologne, Germany, into a well-respected Jewish family. His performance had a strong and intimate edge because of his family's history of fleeing the Nazis in the 1930s and finally settling in the U.S. The play steadfastly adhered to Klemperer's insistence that he would only accept the part if the Nazis were never shown in a favorable manner. Robert Clary, who portrayed the witty and vivacious Corporal Louis LeBeau, contributed more than simply his acting skills to the part. He contributed his practical life experience. Clary was a Holocaust survivor who was born in France. He was held captive in the Buchenwald concentration camp during World War II. Given that history reinforces his place as one of Hogan's heroes, the serial number permanently inked on his arm served as a reminder of what he had endured. Despite being a comedy, Clary's participation gave the show depth and significance that most viewers were unaware of. His performance was made much more poignant by his bravery in participating in a musical that was set during such a trying time in his life. Some of the other actors on Hogan's Heroes, except Clary, did more than merely portray troops on television. They were genuinely experienced in the military. Both Richard Dawson, who portrayed the sly Peter Newkirk, and Bob Crane, who played Colonel Hogan, were in the military before taking on their parts. Their on-screen persona was probably influenced by that personal experience. The way they depicted military life, even in a comedy, has an air of authenticity. Their characters gained more believability because to this delicate yet effective coating of realism. Colonel Klink's monocle and cigar, two of his trademark props, were nearly always present. Here's the humorous part, though. He never really lights that cigar, much less smokes it. It was always there, only not illuminated. This eventually developed into a subtle running joke and a peculiar aspect of his personality. It is symbolic to some fans. Perhaps it symbolizes Klink's incapacity to complete tasks or his incessant diversions. Now, you can't help but view the show with greater significance. There's more, though. To find out, keep watching. Perfection was not the goal of the show. If you've ever paid close attention to Hogan's Heroes, you may have noticed certain oddities, such as props or equipment that obviously date from the 1960s or 1950s, even though the show is set in the 1940s. These appear to be historical idiots at first glance, but there's a catch. Many of those alleged errors were deliberate. These anachronisms were included by the authors to maintain a lighthearted and amusing tone. They wanted to remind audiences that the show wasn't intended to be taken too seriously, rather than striving for flawless authenticity. First and foremost, it was a comedy about World War II, not about it. These light-hearted decisions contributed to the distinctive flavor of the show. Have you ever noticed that Colonel Klink's headwear seems a little strange? It doesn't exactly fit the show's setting in the World War II era. The reason behind this is that it more closely resembles the fashion used by German commanders during World War I. Was it a mistake in the wardrobe? Most likely not. More likely, it was a subtle artistic decision that, like his naive personality, made Klink appear a little out of date and out of step. This kind of era mixing was a creative technique for the show to emphasize character attributes and add visual humor without using words. Are they incapable of allowing people to live the lives they desire? There were many oddball inconsistencies in the presentation. General Burkhalter gives Colonel Klink a memo marked top secret in English in one of the third season's episodes on how to persuade Nazis and make friends. A German military camp would have seen that as a warning sign. Additionally, Colonel Hogan gave his crew the absurd code names Little Red Riding Hood, Papa Bear, and Goldilocks. However, the meaning of one nickname, Cockroach, was never fully clarified. Why did Schultz and Klink consistently refer to LeBeau in that way? It was a jab at his height, according to one theory. Language is the subject of another theory. Kitchens are mentioned in the German words for cockroach, Kakerlake, and Küchenscheibe. Additionally, it could have been an inside joke because LeBeau was the camp's cook. In a sense, Carter's jacket belonged to Hollywood as much as it did to him. In a startling example of costume continuity in movie history, that identical jacket was worn by Frank Sinatra in Von Ryan's Express 1965 and by Greg Kinnear in Autofocus February 2002. Decades later. A wooden signpost indicating the distances to other places appears in a few episodes, which adds realism to the fictional Stalag 13. You'll notice something brilliant, though, if you look closely. Hamelin is one of the cities mentioned. It's hardly a haphazard selection. It most likely alludes to the ancient tale of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. Although it's a minor Easter egg, it demonstrates the author's penchant for subtly incorporating historical and cultural allusions. Small details like those rewarded astute viewers who were paying attention and added charm and dimension to the program. Sergeant Schultz's famous statement, "I know nothing," is impossible to forget. Nothing. It turned into one of the show's most recognizable catchphrases. Here's a fun fact, though. The original script did not include it. During production, actor John Banner came up with it, and it was a wonderful fit for his role. Schultz was the type of guard who would rather avoid trouble by acting as though he was unaware of the inmate's mischievous behavior. What more startling information is contained in Hogan's Heroes? You're about to get even more blown away. Continue to observe. These are Colonel Hogan's real secrets. He is simply known to most fans as Colonel Hogan, the self-assured and witty POW crew leader. However, what is his complete name? In reality, it's Robert Edward Hogan. During the series, you won't hear it very often, but that's on purpose. Soldiers are typically referred to by their rank or last name, just like in the real military. This strategy went beyond merely following the rules. It supported the military backdrop of the show's realism. Nevertheless, the writer's inclusion of personal details, such as Hogan's real name, gave his character greater depth and let fans identify with the guy wearing the uniform. One of the most important members of the Stalag 13 crew was James Kinchlow, who supporters call Kinch. Kinch, who was portrayed by Ivan Dixon, had a special connection to Colonel Hogan. He frequently referred to him as Skipper, a moniker that contrasted with the customary decorum of military life. Without any explanation, that small term of affection conveyed a lot. It suggested a bond based on profound regard, trust, and possibly even fraternity. Little things like this nickname helped demonstrate how close-knit and trustworthy the group truly was in the high-stress setting of a POW camp when loyalty meant everything. One role isn't always sufficient, at least not for Bernard Fox. The gifted actor played both Captain Rodney and the wonderfully hopeless Colonel Crittenden, pulling double duty on Hogan's Heroes. Fox managed to make each character feel completely distinct, even though the same actor played both roles. Without a doubt, you could determine who was who based on their accent, body language, or humorous timing. Budgetary considerations may have influenced the choice, or it may have been an amusing jab at the audience. In any case, it demonstrated the cast's true talent and versatility. TV series and films frequently rely heavily on their taglines. They captivate the viewer like little hooks. It was difficult for Hogan's Heroes to think of a catchy tagline. To convey the essence of the play, they sought something daring, humorous, and unforgettable. Unexpectedly, the winning sentence was a joke. If you like World War II, you'll appreciate Hogan's Heroes, comedian Stan Freberg joked. The concept was initially dismissed, but its developers soon came to the conclusion that it was the ideal balance of edgy and astute. That unintentional phrase turned into a memorable marketing strategy that successfully informed viewers of the type of humor to be expected. Curious and captivated, new fans gathered to the performance. Isn't that simply amazing? How about the tunes? Are there also secrets there? Let's investigate. The actors sang as well. Colonel Hogan was portrayed by Bob Crane, who was more than just a gifted actor. He was a great drummer, too. Crane had established himself as a talented musician long before he became well known on television, and he never wasted his skills. Occasionally, Hogan's idols would infiltrate settings when Hogan could demonstrate his drumming prowess. These musical moments were a delightful surprise for devoted fans. The production further blurred the boundaries between actor and character with subtle references to Crane's real-life enthusiasm. Richard Dawson had a fairly successful singing career in the UK before he became well known as the cheeky Corporal Newkirk or later as the smooth-talking host of Family Feud. Dawson had a warm voice and a stage presence to match, and his acting career took off after his singing career. Although Hogan's Heroes was primarily a comedy, it included a number of great actors, including Dawson. His musical experience enhanced his performance and served as a reminder to viewers of the cast's diversity and depth. They somehow found the perfect cast for a show like Hogan's Heroes. The majority of people are unaware of this. On the show, all four of the actors who portrayed Nazi officers were Jewish. Howard Kane, John Banner, Leon Skin, and Werner Klemperer had all fought in World War II. All of them, with the exception of Kane, had actually escaped Nazi persecution. Another actor on the show, Harold Gould, was a World War II veteran and was Jewish. It's interesting to note that John Banner proposed using Jewish actors to play the Nazis. He said, "Well, who better to play Nazis than us Jews?" in response to the producer's question about why. John was considered for the position of Colonel Kling, while Werner initially tried out for the role of Sergeant Schultz. However, the roles were exchanged, and the rest is history. At one point, Werner thought, "I'm an actress. I can portray a Nazi if I can portray Richard II." However, he only accepted the part after receiving some guarantee that the program would make fun of the adversary rather than exalt it. Together, actors Larry Hovis and Ivan Dixon sang a selection of well-known war songs from the 1940s. "Did you think World War II was funny?" was written in the liner notes on the back of the record cover. The answer was a resounding yes for Hogan's idol followers. What was Germany's reaction to this derision? Let's investigate. Broadcasting in Germany. Although Hogan's Heroes made its US premiere in 1965, German viewers weren't introduced to it until 1992. Almost 30 years have passed since then. The rights were purchased by Kirchgrupp, a film distributor, in 1991, but it wasn't until a year later that the film was broadcast in Germany. There was more to the delay than timing. It was about making significant adjustments. The title needed to be revised first. Stacheldraht und Fersengeld, which translates to barbed wire and heels, was the original German name. In order to properly depict the tone of the series, it was eventually altered to Ein Käfig voller Helden, or A Cage Full of Heroes. The show initially had trouble in Germany. The translation was not clear. A large portion of the humor was missed due to the lip syncing being off. In order to better cater to German viewers, they began making adjustments. Even more ridiculous lines were provided to characters like Klink, who also had an enigmatic off-screen girlfriend named Kalink, whom we never met but only heard about. Heilkräuter, which roughly translates to hail herbs, was used instead of Heil Hitler in all contexts. The plots were even loosened. The heroes demolish a munitions facility in the American adaptation. Instead, it was transformed into a toilet paper factory in the German dub. In a different scenario, a bombing raid on Hamburg was recast as a propaganda exercise in which the Royal Air Force dropped confectionery. The show was able to eventually win over German audiences thanks to these oddball adjustments. Even though it took decades, viewers on the other side of the Atlantic finally got to see the antics in Stalag 13-2, better late than never. The frightening scar on General Burkhalter's face was more than cosmetics. It was authentic. That scar was given to actor Leon Askin, whose real name was Leo Askenazi, when he was a child because the SS beat him for being Jewish. However, he had more deeper emotional wounds from that trauma. The actor who played Corporal LeBeau, Robert Clary, had severe injuries of his own. Robert Clary revisited the atrocities of his past in the documentary 5714, which was titled after his Nazi internment number. Unaware of who would make it through the trip, he recalled being herded into cattle wagons with other captives. "How come we can treat another with such inhumanity?" he inquired. Although it's entertaining to watch, the heroes probably wouldn't have been housed in the same POW camp. Lower-ranking inmates and officers were typically kept apart. We are scattered everywhere. Then there is the issue of Speedy Gonzales. Although Speedy did not appear until 1953, the cartoon mouse was discussed repeatedly by the characters. A time machine must have belonged to Hogan. Although the Pentagon wasn't completed until 1943, Colonel Hogan also says he worked there. Even the black Gestapo outfits depicted in the show were erroneous after its purported time frame. They were merely ceremonial. As depicted in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Gestapo agents actually wore ordinary uniforms. However, how did things go so smoothly? How was everyone's performance so funny? Let's investigate. An absolutely amazing discovery. Hogan's heroes were more than just actors. They were significantly more talented than what we saw on film, as were their families. For instance, Werner Klemperer. The fact that Colonel Klink was a terrible violinist was a common joke on the show. Werner was the opposite in real life. Because his father was a professional conductor, he was actually very good at playing the violin. From 1973 until 1995, Werner frequently narrated operas and was even capable of conducting orchestras himself. Last but not least is John Banner, who portrayed Sergeant Schultz, the endearing large man who was constantly discussing his wife's cooking. Fortunately, in that instance, art did not mimic life. Before being chosen for the show, John reportedly gained over 202 pounds thanks to his wife's delectable cooking. The entire cast seemed to be surrounded by music. Colonel Hogan and Bob Crane played the drums. Major Hochstadter Howard Kane was a banjo player who won awards. Dawson, Richard. Robert Clary, LeBeau, Larry Hovis, Carter, Ivan Dixon, and Kinchlow were all singers, while Newkirk was also a pianist. Indeed, a number of them were given the opportunity to perform on the official record of the program, which became a favorite among fans. Was an actual setting even used? Or perhaps it was all a big prank? To find out, keep watching. Filming details and sets. Stalag 13C, a real World War II camp in Hammelburg, Bavaria, served as the inspiration for Hogan's Heroes, despite the fact that it was a fictional prisoners of war camp. The show's set designers used the overcrowded and basic resource-poor real camp as a model for creating the fictitious one. There were two primary locations where the show was filmed. Desilu Studios, which changed its name to Paramount Studios in Season 4, was used to film all of the inside scenes. Production shifted to Cinema General Studios for the final two seasons, 5 and 6. The Los Angeles metropolitan region served as the backdrop for the outdoor shots. It's interesting to note that, although being filmed in sunny Southern California, each episode was designed to appear to be set in the winter. They first imitated snow using salt in the early seasons, but they ultimately moved to white paint. The set was utilized again in a number of other projects, such as Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, 1975, and Trial by Fury, 1968. Sadly, it was destroyed while Ilsa was being filmed. Later, The Fortune 1975 was filmed on the cleared site. However, it had been demolished and transformed into an industrial park by 1976. In the show, General Burkhalter's vehicle served as more than just a prop. It was a unique jewel. Only 57 Mercedes-Benz W31s in the black and gray design were ever produced, including the one used on Hogan's Heroes. There were just 3 remaining after the war. One was utilized in the performance, another was converted into a fire truck, and one ended up with the Spanish monarchy. The Mercedes G4 parade car, which was seen in the opening titles, was another unique automobile. It was another legendary piece of automotive history that was featured on the series and had been a favorite of the elite of Nazi Germany during World War II. The autos weren't the only unique features. The headgear and other props and costumes worn by the actors were also rather distinctive. On his desk, Colonel Klink proudly displayed a pickle hub, a type of Prussian army helmet. He handled it as though it were a priceless family heirloom. Fans still view it as an important piece of memorabilia, even though the one used in the program most likely came from the prop department. It is currently on exhibit with Hogan's Army Corps cap at the Liberty Aviation Museum in Port Clinton, Ohio. What was the show's level of success and why? We'll see. The success of the show. Between 1965 and 1971, Hogan's Heroes aired for 168 episodes, making it the longest-running comedy influenced by World War II at the time. For the most of its run, the show was widely popular, and cast member Robert Clary once told the Television Academy that they adored it. It was incredible. I continue to go by LeBeau. However, by its last season, the program was having problems. The so-called rural cleanse was one of the main causes of its cancellation. In order to appeal to city consumers, TV advertisers pushed for more urban-centered programs and fewer series with a rural focus. Viewers became less interested in seeing a humorous portrayal of combat at the same time when the Vietnam combat was getting more intense. Nevertheless, Hogan's Heroes deserved some credit. An actor in a major role in a comedy series in 1966 and 1967 both had superb, continuous performances. In 1968, Gordon Avil was recognized for his cinematography, and Nita Talbot was nominated for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy. Only 2 victories were won by the series, and both went to Werner Klemperer for his legendary performance as the foolish Colonel Klink in 1968 and 1969. He received nominations for the same position in 1966, 1967, and 1970. The makers were honored with one of the first Image Awards in 1967. Only 6 other television programs, including I Spy, Star Trek, and Mission Impossible, received the same accolade for their role in promoting the Negro image. Later, Hogan's Heroes was listed as the 100th most unexpected moment in TV history by TV Land and TV Guide. The show's outrageous and audacious idea was what set it apart, earning it the moniker of an unlikely POW camp comedy. It was so absurd that it managed to work somehow. Nobody thought that such a stupid idea could succeed, yet it did. The actors in the show weren't just recycled. It also used other series' talent. A few of the guest stars were from shows with a similar wartime theme. On Hogan's Heroes, for instance, MASH star William Christopher played a British pilot, a German soldier, and a prisoner of war. Harold J. Stone played the parts of a German general and an American spy. There is a lengthy and occasionally surprising roster of guest stars. Berlin Betty, an underground agent, was portrayed by Antoinette Bauer. In addition to portraying Tiger in multiple episodes, Arlene Martel also appeared as Olga and Gretchen. Throughout 5 episodes, Henry Corden, best remembered for being Fred Flintstone's voice, performed 5 distinct characters. Both on and off screen, the ensemble of Hogan's Heroes had a lot of camaraderie. Their genuine enjoyment of each other's company was evident not only in the finished film but also in their willingness to joke about and maintain a lighthearted atmosphere behind the scenes. After the show, a few members of the cast even got back together. In the 1968 comedy The Wicked Dreams of Paula Schultz, several of the principal actors reunited. John Banner and Werner Klemperer also got the opportunity to collaborate earlier in 1955 when they both starred in Alfred Hitchcock Presents' Safe Conduct episode 21. There's a ton more behind-the-scenes fun to discover, from bloopers to unedited moments that made the final cut, whether you're a fan of Hogan's Heroes or simply enjoy vintage wartime TV series. And if you're a huge fan of old Hollywood lore, you'll want to see why some moments were kept in the series and perhaps watch the Hogan's Heroes blooper clip again. In addition, a lot of men believe that their vehicles are unique, but let's just say that some of the actors had personal secrets about their vehicles. What was the final outcome of the show? Did the end stem from any secrets or scandals? Let's investigate. Confusion over continuity, when the show was unable to maintain its focus. Even the name of the camp was a source of confusion for the show. As though the authors were undecided, the first season alternates between Stalag 13 and Camp 13. Although Sergeant Schultz announces his serial number frequently, it varies in almost every episode. He seemed unable to recall it either. Then there's Carter's aptitude for chemistry. In one episode, the scientist claims that since he just owns a pharmacy, he is unable to instruct LeBeau. However, earlier in the German bridge's collapse, he uses bleach and pneumonia to create chlorine gas. Later, he is mixing mineral water formulations with confidence in Hogan Springs. Even more perplexing is the fact that, by the 1940s, only 92 of the 103 known elements were included in the periodic table. Carter seems to have knowledge of the future as well. You are now aware of the enormous Hogan's Hero mysteries. How do you feel about the show's success? Tell us in the space provided for comments below.